Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Tuesday Focus for 2026. This is February 10th, and in this show, we're going to be discussing that relatively new term, multimedia journalism. Some of you probably have heard about that. Everybody on our panel has definitely not just heard about it, but they're working in it. You sometimes hear it talked about as MMJs. It's kind of one of the hottest media jobs going. And as our information economy pivots towards faster moving live streams and social media driven content, these kind of jobs are often required, and they don't just require the skills of traditional news writing, but on-camera reporting plus video and audio capture, even editing on a variety of platforms, all done often by a single practitioner. And that's not the way I grew up in the industry, so things are changing rapidly. When it's time for delivery, multimedia journalists also are often asked to multitask once again, prepping content for both broadcast, social media delivery. They might have to work in both horizontal and vertical crops and extracting audio streams sometime for podcasts, or maybe grabbing poster frames and carving out social media friendly extracts. There's just a lot going on that when I was in the business years ago, we just didn't have to deal with. Usually we had full crews and we had people to do this. And these days, somebody can go out as an individual and their responsibility is to cover all of this. So in a nutshell, modern digital journalism is changing super fast. And we'll be discussing all of that today with our outstanding panel of experts and practitioners. If you've been watching the Tuesday Focus shows for a while, you're familiar with a couple of the folks that are going to be here. You're probably familiar with Jason Carilla. Jason's brother, Stephen Carilla, who is a professor at Florida State University and teaches multimedia journalism there, will be on our panel today. Stephen, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you. Florida International University. You're going to get me in trouble with my
Florida
bosses.
International. I apologize to you. Notes happen. And also returning is one of my favorite panelists, Willard D. Shepard, six-time Emmy-winning broadcast journalist and rapidly becoming one of my favorite authorities on the topic. Willard, welcome back. It's good to have you here.
It's always great, and we can plug our FIU because my law school and our law school has the highest bar passage rate in the state of Florida, so a double whammy for you tonight.
Outstanding. And as if that wasn't enough, we have an incredible panel of working multimedia journalists who can give us kind of the inside scoop on this new era. So let me introduce them. We got a lot of people to talk about here. Nicole Ardilla, for KVIA, ABC's affiliate 7 in El Paso, Texas.
And you had it right at first, Bill, Ardila. And yes, it's pretty cold here in Texas. You'd be surprised.
Well, I hope you stay warm, and we're enjoying having you on the panel tonight. Next up, Christine Harris at WKRG. That's the CBS affiliate in Pensacola, Florida. Christine, are you on here?
Yes, it's Christina. Yes, I'm excited to be here with you. And I'm actually in Mobile. We cover Mobile to Pensacola, and I am in the main station in Mobile, but we do cover all the way from Mobile through Pensacola.
Back in the broadcast days, I knew those as ADIs, area of dominant influence for the advertising side of the business. Things changed so much. Casey Mintz from KSNB, the NBC affiliate, Hastings, Nebraska.
That I have to say, that is impressive, Bill, that you can just pull those affiliates like that.
I practice. We will have more people as we cycle through this, but we've got so much to talk about today. We have a huge body of expertise. I do have a little piece of housekeeping to get to before we get too far into the show, and that has to do with questions and answers. If you've been here at our office hours broadcast before, or narrowcast or webcast, however you want to characterize them, you know that we are very big on viewer questions. So I'm going to toss up a QR code on the screen right now. If you have questions for the show, for any of our panelists or on any of the topics we talk about tonight, you can just shoot that with your phone or iPad or other tablet, or you can just type in askofficehours.global in any web browser. It'll get you into the Q&A system, and we will get those live. The folks in the back end will take a look through them, make sure they're formed in a reasonable question, because I'm probably going to have to read them out, or Cindy's going to have to read them out a little bit later as we get into the second block. So that's what's going on here. I'm going to go to Stephen Carilla, our professor here. Because when we started talking about doing this, I thought the very first thing we should do for those of you who are watching who maybe aren't as familiar with the term multimedia journalism is to get Stephen to actually define it for us. Stephen, how are you?
Oh, it's doing well. It's great to be here. Yeah. So this term might not be familiar to the viewers because you don't always they're presented as reporters on the air, but there's so much more than that because they're shooting and they're editing for themselves also. In your introduction, you mentioned that it's new, and depending on where you live, it could be even newer, right? Most trends in media will start in the larger markets and trickle their way down, but this is actually a style of reporting that started in the small markets and is now actually moving its way up. If, in the beginning, the small markets would save money, by not having to have a photographer and an editor, a field producer, and they would start, when I was coming up in the business, they would call it a one-man band. And the term one-man band kind of has this connotation like, here's all the things that you have to do. And the term multimedia journalist kind of has a more positive feel to it. Here are all the things that you get to do. But it's actually moved its way up from the smaller markets to the medium-sized markets. And now you'll even see some multimedia journalists floating around in the Miami market for a couple of the major network affiliates and owned and operated stations here. So it's fine for us in the schools because we teach the students how to do everything. And this is a great job to start off in because you really have to hone your skills. You have an appreciation later in your career for what your photographer is doing, what the editors are in the assignment desk are doing back at the station. And so this is, this job is the key to getting your start in the business. And so we focus most of our education on that.
Makes perfect sense. Plus, just the nature of news gathering and things have changed. When I was around TV stations in my early years, huge shoulder-mounted cameras, huge crews, sometimes lighting. It was just a complicated business. Now, with the prevalence of so many stories going direct out to the web and things like that, there's just new things necessary to reach the eyeballs of the audience who are interested in seeing these stories. One of the people I wanted to really talk to here earlier was Willard Shepard. Willard, with all of his Emmys and has been in the business for a long, long time. What's your feeling about these changes that are happening and how what was the traditional standards of the news industry are seeming to be just going in all sorts of different directions at the same time?
Well, I always say the fascinating thing about where we are today is that the legacy, when, I started at NBC 3 decades ago and doing the anchoring and the investigative reporting and the politics and all of that, when I'd go to cover the Republican or Democratic conventions, I've got a producer, I've got an audio, a photographer, I've got an editor, all of those types of things. These young journalists that are on with us tonight are doing all of that. And this is cutting across the spectrum because, as an example, our NBC reporters from our owned and operated stations here in the US now that are at the Olympics as we speak, the multimedia journalists are doing that there. So the person that's covering the Olympics for NBC here in Miami is an MMJ. She's shooting her own material. She's editing it. She's her own lighting person, all of those things. So you ask, why is that at the end of the day being done in a gigantic market across the country? And it's really the cost savings, because instead of having 3 or 4 people, you're down to 1 person. On the other side of the coin, and I will say, I'll put my lawyer's hat on, my media lawyer's hat, and say the downside and the things that you are putting in danger are the journalism itself. Because this person is doing so many tasks, they now may not be able to focus as much on the reporting. And so as a lawyer, I'm looking, saying, wait a second, we need to make sure that the reporting is being done. And because of these other tasks, that isn't shortchanged, and we end up on the air with something and defame an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been interesting to me because as these new tools roll out, particularly operations that are using some of the more agile things, iPhones, smaller cameras, in these kind of journalistic settings, it seems almost like what's the difference between a true journalist and somebody who goes out on their own to try to cover something happening in their neighborhood. I mean, I see this kind of breakdown where people are getting news from the weirdest places now. Things that I would never have experienced, like a lot of chatter in a neighborhood on something like Nextdoor or Facebook feeds and things like that. And this are some of the sources where people are getting their kind of information and news for their local communities. How does that fit into this mix with the real standards of journalism that have been so important for making sure that what hits people's thought processes have been vetted and is accurate? Does anybody want to weigh in on that kind of conflict that we're dealing with a lot these days?
Well, I'll start out. I'll just simply say that we are in a different era. The great thing is that people have the ability to execute their free speech rights. It no longer takes all the infrastructure of NBC to be able to do that. A person can do it on their own with a podcast and a smartphone. That's a great thing. The downside to it is people can say just about anything without any vetting whatsoever at all. And also the kinds of photography. Our photographers, our professional photographers do this. This is their craft. And lighting, all of the other things that they do have basically been degraded in a sense because people accept what a cell phone video looks like now. They accept what a surveillance video looks like now. Things that traditionally you would never put on television because of the content or the quality of them, and now they're completely acceptable. So those things have all been degraded, and you will see many places, and I'll use this Miami market as an example. There is a website, a location called Only in Dade, and they built a platform on regular neighbors, business people. They'd see something happening, video with the smartphone, and they send it to them. And on many days, the number of people watching that platform, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube or on their website, is greater than the legacy media stations here. And many people come forward and send their videos to them directly, and the legacy media stations follow behind that, and courtesy Only in Dade. So it is a different world because these videos are simply accepted and accepted everywhere.
I'm actually interested in hearing from some of our multimedia journalists who are out there in the field, and I'm interested in finding out how you got interested in this field. Does anybody want to wave a hand or something and say you want to weigh in on what your path has been like into it? I see Casey. Casey, how did you get into this?
Almost by accident. Telling a story. I mean, I know Willard, watching you or Glenna Myers or the other reporters, the investigative reporters on TV when I lived in South Florida. It was something where it was like, I want to do this. And I had this idea that I was going to go into my first market, and it was going to be, okay, I'll have this person to help me out here, here, here. And then I took Professor Steve's class. I still call him Professor Steve. I don't know if he wants me to call him anything else. But I took his class, and then I realized how it was that shooting, writing, editing, and all of it. And honestly, I've gotten to a point now where I like the control over my projects. So I kind of would have a hard time giving it up.
When you go out, are you pushed into shooting things vertically as well as horizontally for things? I see Nicole has a finger up there. Nicole, what do you think?
Well, I definitely think that, it comes at a price. Like you said, being a multimedia journalist, it definitely gives a person like us, people like us who are starting in the field, a taste of everything: photography, editing, lighting, audio, social media. And like you said, we're a one-man band, but at the same time, it comes at the price of our quality of our reporting. And for example, in El Paso, I'm a morning reporter, so I have to get everything done from the day before so I can come in at 4 in the morning and everything is ready. And they're pushing that social media because that's where news is going to be coming as we move on throughout the years, we might lose cable TV, and streaming services might not be the best platform where people want to get their news. It's all on your phone, and that's why you always have to kind of tease to the newscast if that's even going to exist in the time that's coming.
And I think you guys have come through journalism programs, so I'm sure you were schooled in the idea of sourcing and fairness and all the rest of the things. I sometimes wonder, with so much access by so many people, many of whom have no idea, they just decide they're going to go out and they see something happen, a problem or an event in the neighborhood, and they rush and think all I have to do is hold up my camera, shoot a little bit, say whatever I want to say, and then toss it up on the web. And that's going to be part of the record of that event. And it just seems like a strange thing. Anybody here want to talk about the ethics of journalism and kind of what you were schooled into in terms of doing this as a public service kind of a thing, where things like accuracy do still matter in the journalistic tradition? Go ahead, Christina.
Hey there. So the company that I work for, they actually mandate that we all have 2 to 3 eyes of two to three sets of eyes on anything that goes up on the web. So whether that be a script, whether that be any videos or any type of information, we're always checking for that accuracy. And I think that sometimes it can be difficult, like trying to track down other people to confirm information. But I think in the long run, it kind of makes for a cleaner newscast. We're not having to go back and, retract and make corrections because we're just taking something that we see. We also have a website or, a Facebook, TikTok page, World Star Mobile, everything's on World Star. And so we're, always looking at that and all of these other platforms in our DMA. And so we always have to, it's important that you are verifying that information, because sometimes you may see one thing and you think it's something else, and you might see it, but it's actually something else. You might see it, but there's a different reason behind it. And so I think that that's the I guess the trade-off that we're seeing a lot in online and on TikTok and things like that. We're not really able to, if anyone's able to pull out their phone and just record anything, we're not able to really know the whole scope of everything. We only get like a snippet of it, 10, 15 seconds. But no, what happened before the 10 seconds and what happened after that? And what's the context of that? And so I think that that's the role that we play as journalists, to ask those questions and to get to the bottom of it.
Makes perfectly good sense. I'm going to do one more little topic just because I'm so fascinated with it. We all see this incredible flood of AI-generated stuff that is hitting everything. You're going to be in an environment through the course of your career where there's a little less trust that what you're seeing actually happened, that somebody didn't just do some generative AI magic and throw images up on the screens or anywhere else. Does anybody have any feelings about how that's going to impact you through the rest of your careers?
I definitely think that's a very valid question. And I think every time I open social media, the photos and the videos just get more and more real. And it's kind of, like, okay, whoa, one day we're gonna be, seeing a video or something's gonna come to the newsroom, and we're really gonna have to stop and question whether or not this is legit or not. And so I think that goes back to, what we were talking about before. Just making sure that it's true, checking in with sources. We're just really going to have to start digging in deeper, trying to get multiple eyes and multiple sources to confirm certain information, because we won't really know, unfortunately, unless someone makes some sort of device where we can put a video or a picture into some sort of database and it can tell us immediately if it's AI or not. I don't know. Maybe that's like a $1 million invention right there. But we're always going to have to be doing our job to verify information, and I think that that's what we do right now, and I think that that's what we're going to have to continue to do even more as AI is kind of making its way into the mainstream media.
Nicole, what do you think?
Well, I think, like Christina said, we are the fact checkers. So if the fact checker is getting a little confused and can't tell if something's real, that's when it starts to get a little worrisome. I mean, I personally don't trust most of my feed on social media anymore, especially when it comes to national news. When you're a small market, like most of us here locally, we probably don't see as much AI generated content. But when we see that national news, like we've been seeing lately, like the Minnesota shooting, when it comes to ICE raids, or even podcasters, what President Trump is saying online, a lot of it is AI generated deep fakes or audio played, and the mouth is moving, but he's not really saying that. So a lot of it we have to get fact checked through those higher markets, those national media outlets like ABC, NBC, and that's when we have to wait, and us as the small markets can't really do much.
Yeah, it's been real interesting to see this happen, and you bring up some really good points about truth and manipulation and things like that. It's going to be a challenge coming up. I think it's about time. We're at 20 past, which is when I had hoped to switch to audience questions. So we're going to do that. We're going to move into a segment where Cindy's going to read the questions that are coming in from our viewers. And anybody who wants to raise a hand or flag me down to take on one of these, feel free. Cindy, what do we got first?
Here's a question for us from Brody Hefner in New York City. As nearly 40% of young adults get news from influencers, how should professional journalists adapt to a world where quote-unquote authentic voices are often trusted more than institutional ones?
And Stephen Carrillo is going to help us out here. Stephen, what do you think?
In a lot of ways, that is the role of a multimedia journalist, right? Like if someone sees something online and it's not trustworthy, that's when you immediately go and try and verify that with a source that you trust. You know, these reporters that are on the panel with us, they're not just representing themselves, they're representing their reputable news organization that they work for. And the role of the multimedia journalist allows there to be more of those, right? Which are more people checking the facts on more different stories. And a lot of times, if you see something and you're only seeing it in one place, and you have to think about the gravity of that story. If that was a true story, it wouldn't be in one place, it would be everywhere. And then if you have a news station in your local market, and especially if you have a reporter that you trust, well, go and check what they're saying and see if they're mentioning that story too. And at the end of the day, if the coverage isn't as big as the scoop, then you need to really doubt what you're looking at.
Casey, you wanted to weigh in on this.
Yeah, I think here in Nebraska, especially in a lot of the rural areas of Nebraska, you have a lot of social media things kind of hitting you from every side. And I think the biggest thing that we do to kind of get over those influencer voices is building credibility with community members. Because when you're in these rural communities, you know, you're going to see the viewers, you're going to see them at Walmart, you're going to see them at just walking in the downtown area, and they're going to ask you about stuff. So I think it's building that credibility, being a face that people can then, you know, ask. And also too, like, I think showing your work a lot of the times, that builds the authenticity. You know, I think there was a couple of weeks ago, one of our reporters or MMJs did a story, and he showed his work. He was like, okay, this is what I did. This is how much work I poured into it. Whereas an influencer, you probably don't have that. And I think showing that work does a lot to help that credibility.
Nicole.
I think a lot of us, especially when we have an affiliation, like for example, my station is ABC7, and for example, we had the whole Jimmy Kimmel issue happen. A lot of our community was blaming us for what happened. So I think the community also has to remember that we are not the national media that makes commentary. We are neutral, and we also have to basically build that trust with the community as well. And if we are presenting opinions, ours doesn't exist, but the ones we are showcasing are either the community leaders or just real people in the community who are sharing their opinions on an issue. And it's also based on the way that we present it, right? If we're presenting something on social media, it might be a little bit more relatable than, let's say, a newscast that nobody really watches at 10 p.m. or noon, things like that. It's the way that you present it, and also engage with the audience as well in the comments or that hook in the social media video too.
Jared, what are your thoughts?
Working here in Columbia as a sports anchor covering the South Carolina Gamecocks, it's interesting what Steve brought up about the coverage being as big as the scoop. One really bizarre trend I've been seeing recently, and it's happened here with South Carolina, but I see these accounts aggregating for several schools across the nation, is you'll have these accounts that dress themselves like a sports reporter. They take a professional headshot. They say they're the host of this show. Their bio looks very professional. And one of those appeared here. And as happens in the off season, there were coaching hires meant to be made with South Carolina. And I was seeing things about people who were rumored that we didn't hear of, that other journalists that had been here for 40 years weren't reporting on. But somehow this person that had been reporting on South Carolina for 2 weeks knew so much better than all the rest of us who these coaching hires were. And I think that's ultimately where a tried and true journalistic approach comes through is we don't have the luxury of putting out inauthentic news like that because our credibility is on the line. Whereas with these accounts that don't really have any oversight like that, if they put out something wrong, who cares? They move to the next one. Oh, well, my bad.
So reputation and being a part of the community seems to be a consistent thread here in terms of gaining credibility with an audience. Interesting. Let's go to our next question.
This one comes to us from Guy Cochran in Seattle, Washington. How would you encourage the next generation to get involved with journalism?
Oh, good question. Casey Mintz is going to start us off here. Casey?
I think a shameless plug for Professor Steve, go to Florida International University and take his class.
But this is an uncompensated endorsement. I just want to tell everybody right up front here. Go ahead, Casey.
Sorry, I had to throw that in there. But I think that the biggest thing is just critical thinking. I think when it comes to just seeing things, like don't just take stuff at face value. Like when you see a press release or when you see a new mall opening or something like that, don't just say, okay, great, a new mall's opening. Like, okay, who's paying for this mall? How are they paying for this mall? That was the biggest thing I had to learn when I got here was not taking stuff for face value. And that was one of the best lessons outside of college that I've learned is just dig until you get the actual original answer.
Sounds surprisingly to me like follow the money.
I think that this frustration over misinformation is what drives students to get into journalism. You see things online, everybody follows them, but you want to be more than that, right? And that's what pushes people toward this toward this major in college and toward this profession, because you want to be better, you want to do it better. And I think that we're about to see a renaissance as far as people choosing journalism, and specifically broadcast journalism, as their major in college, because they want to be that trusted source out there, and we really need the numbers. And part of the advantage of this multimedia journalism role is it allows us to double the number of storytellers that we have out there in the field. So there are more people looking into this and trying to make sure that they get to the bottom of these facts. And, anybody with a cell phone, like you said earlier, could go out and post a piece of video, but it takes, a higher level of accountability to be able to be one of these storytellers that you can trust. And I believe that the audience is getting smarter, and I believe that they can tell the difference.
Well, and it's a double-edged sword. There are a lot of amateurs out there running around with camcorders, not smartphones and things like that. But that means, as in the case we just saw with all over the news, multiple people at a scene of some notable event makes it harder to spin that one way or another when people have a lot of realistic-looking instant video to take a look at. Christina, did you get your thing settled? And are you back in? Nope, still not. All right. We'll go on to the next question.
Jason Robertshaw in Sarasota, Florida is asking, is it asking too much of one person to manage audio, video, lighting, connectivity, and stay situationally aware while reporting in real time?
I'm going to start with Nicole.
I mean, yeah, when I, signed my contract, I knew what I was signing up for, right? It said MMJ, and going to FIU, that is exactly what I prepared for, especially when we did a fellowship in Washington, D.C. And it's all about, getting your feet wet, especially in a city that you don't know. That adds even more pressure to the whole MMJ idea. But, it's all about practice. I mean, it's all about learning things that you never have done before. And it does, like I mentioned earlier, take away from the quality of your reporting, especially with the deadlines that we have to face. If you're a dayside reporter, you have to turn around probably 3, 4 different versions of your story. And sometimes you forget little things, maybe the names, the ages, the proper facts, and that's all getting in the way just because you have to get it done in time.
That's interesting to me. You said 3 or 4 different versions. Are you cutting differently for like horizontal and vertical and some little snippet that might go on to one of the social media platforms? Are you having to redo the work in various configurations?
Well, yeah, actually, I think a lot of us can relate, not just in my station, but yeah, social media is definitely one big factor, but we also have to turn in for the maybe the noon show. If we have a breaking news early in the day, then the four o'clock show, 5 o'clock show, 6 o'clock show, and sometimes they want another one for the 10 o'clock show. So there's a lot of versions, different sound bites you need to cut, different people, different elements you want to put into your story, and making sure you leave out the little facts that don't really matter as much, and probably incorporate more of the emotions of the people that you interviewed.
So the
Professor.
question was whether or not it's too much for one person to manage. And I think the answer is no, if that's the way that they're educated. Like we're getting smarter uh, in academia when we're teaching these skills that we're not teaching them to work in groups as much. We're not teaching them, we're preparing them for a world that they're about to industry that they're about to enter, where they have to do all of these functions on their own. And the hope is that by the time they get there, they've had experience, doing all of this stuff for themselves. Yeah, they have classmates. They can work together if they want to. When we do live shots, we usually do it that way. But a lot of the training that's involved is authentic to the job that they're going to have when they do it. And the hope is that once they get hired, they don't feel like they're doing this for the first time. There's a degree of familiarity to it based on what they did in school.
Let's sneak off to the next question. We got a bunch here in the queue.
This one comes to us from Andre DeLay in Berlin. Which major changes and challenges do you see for current multimedia journalists?
Casey Mintz is going to tackle this. Casey?
I think AI is going to be the biggest challenge so far. I know corporations like Gray are trying to use it to their advantage, to take a little bit of the more non-essential jobs off a reporter's plate. They just introduced a AI assistant that will take your VOSOT scripts or your packet script and it'll make it into a web article. Full disclosure, I work for a Gray station, so that's how I know that. But even with that tool, I'll put a package script into it, but I never trust what comes out. What comes out is, and I do know, like sometimes people will do that, and I think AI is going to be the biggest thing combating, learning how to implement it in what we're doing, and also how to combat it. Quick story: over Christmas, someone put out an AI video of the mayor of Grand Island, Nebraska, saying they banned Christmas lights. Well, did they ban Christmas lights? Of course not. They have a Christmas light competition, but we had to then take that and we had to put it on the news and say this isn't real, because there were people in the comments of that Facebook video saying, wait, is this real? Is this real? So I think AI is going to be the biggest implementation and fighting back against wrong uses of it.
For the last 5 years on Office Hours, we've talked a ton about AI coming in, and it's really interesting. One of our guests that I really found fascinating was talking about the difference between utility AI, those things that manage to automate tasks that people generally don't want to do and have to do, and generative AI that is holding out at least some suggestion that it can create things from scratch without much more than simple prompts. And it's really interesting to see how this develops.
Yeah, just to that point, with this, and I'm fabulously encouraged. Everything I've heard from our MMJ journalist here so far deals and goes back with integrity. And we are basically, this profession is under attack in our country and has been so for the last decade. A third of the population doesn't believe what they see or hear through our legacy media operations, and or if it's something that they disagree with. And it'll be a tremendous challenge going forward for our journalists here to continue to operate with that integrity and convince people that what they're telling them is actually true, actually been vetted. And I'm encouraged from what I'm hearing. The opportunity to be able to do things because they're MMJs is greatly expanded. And Nicole, I'll use an example for you. I've been from El Paso across the border into Juarez, doing investigations, but having with me an entire team of people and an entire team of police and from the Mexican State Police with operations. And clearly, while that's a safety consideration, it also limits what we're actually going to be able to do. And I don't know if your organization at this juncture, because of what's transpiring, you can even go across the border into Juarez. But just imagine if you're able to do so and do so safely, I would encourage you to go. And because only you are going, without all of this other infrastructure, you're going to be able to obtain all different types of incredible stories. Just with what is happening in our country today, I presume that there are a significant number of people who had and used the app and had an appointment with the State Department to actually come into the United States legally, but never made it because all of that was shut down. What has happened to those people? How are they managing that? Did they go back to where they were originally came from, or did they build a life just on the other side of the border? Those types of things, and that's just an example for Nicole, that can be done because you don't have this big infrastructure with you and people are more willing to talk to you. You can go more places and do more things.
I just saw that Leon popped back in, so they must have done a little work on the back end. Can you unmute yet? No, doesn't look like it, so I'll still hold off on that. Let's go to our next question.
This one comes to us from Florence Donald in Silver Spring, Maryland. What is the standard kit the multimedia journalist takes into the field?
Multimedia journalism gives you tools in your tool belt, essentially, to be able to navigate other aspects of multimedia, right? So that's kind of a way that I think about it, right? Like, I know how to edit and, shoot my video, and I know how to do it all under pressure, like I get 3 gold stars, it's kind of like a badge of honor in a way because I can do it all. Like there's nothing that we can't do. And so, I think when we're going back to the toolbox, or what was it? The kit?
Is there a standard kit?
Standard kit. Okay, yes. So I keep everything on me. I mean, I've got flats, I've got heels, first aid kit. We had last year in January, it doesn't snow obviously in Alabama, but I mean, it snowed. It was like, I think 6 or 7 inches. And so we all had to like be stuck in the newsroom for like 3 days. So I have a change of clothes in my car. I have a dress, if I'm going to court. I have, slacks if I'm doing more of a casual story, but sneakers and jeans. I mean, I've got a whole closet. If I had to spend the night at the news station for a week, I'd probably be good. But I keep everything on me in regards to that, heels, open toed and closed toed. You just stay ready so you don't have to get ready. But in regards to equipment, you've got your camera. I've got my stick mic. I've got my lav mic. I personally hate the stick mic. I love a lav mic because I can get more out of an interview when people aren't, you don't have this in their face. So I have my camera, I have my stick mic, I have my lav mic, obviously all of my batteries and my tripod and my computer and my SD cards, and that usually gets the job done. So that's kind of what works for me.
Now that we are the one-man band, we definitely have to carry our laptop or 2 cell phones if your station gives you a work cell phone. And I use that cell phone as a camera because I personally find it much easier and better quality than our little MMJ camera that you have to plug a stick mic into. And they give us some Bluetooth mics. We use a DJI brand, not sponsored, just putting it out there. And now
So
they're giving us
absolutely okay. We
and
don't
now
have
they're
any
giving
commercial sponsors, so you can say anything you want.
Okay, good. And then now we're using gimbals for our social media content. Personally, I feel like a dinosaur. I don't know how to work the gimbal. It has a mind of its own, so I still have to learn how to use it. Ring light, tripod, like Christina said, your headphones, IFB sometimes doesn't work out in the field, so you just gotta plug it into your phone and use what you got.
I was just, before I get to Stephen, I was just talking to my wife, who happens to be a digital content coordinator at KPBS, and they are outfitting all of their people. And I was talking to her the other day, and I was saying, well, what are you guys editing on? She said, well, if you're in the station, it's Premiere. If you're in the truck, it's Final Cut. So they're having to learn 2 completely different edit systems, just depending on where they are and what they're trying to get their story out from. I found that fascinating. Stephen, you wanted to get on this whole subject of what's important to carry with you?
Yeah, I would say the standard is there's no standard. Like she mentioned the cell
Exactly.
phone, she mentioned the DJI microphone. You guys on this program are familiar with the Osmo camera. Like you'll see MMJs carrying those in their purse in addition to their professional gear. Even when it comes to our students, it used to be that the professor would tell you, no, no, we have professional gear here. You check out that professional gear, and that's all that you use. But now it's like, look at the content that I can create on this consumer gear. And so as a professor, I've just kind of adopted, if you can't tell, you can't tell. If the video is excellent, if the audio is excellent, then who am I to say that this doesn't belong on the air? And that is trickling into the professional world where you'll see, people incorporate video shot with their cell phone into their story, with the DJI mic, with the DJI camera, and they're getting into places that you can't get into with the pro gear, and they're doing things, getting creative, using, face tracking technology to do stand-ups that you could only do with the photographer present, and they're able to do it by themselves. So, there's nothing in place to stifle creativity, and the standards as far as the standard goes, the sky's the limit.
Casey, you wanted to get in on this?
I think the thing that just kind of got new for us is phone tripods and like Nicole was saying, Bluetooth mics. We almost use that as a second camera angle that we can kind of set up and then just say, okay, this is how we're gonna get a second camera angle. I think another big thing that we're using is on our station phones, we have the ability to send raw video that we just shot. So I can take it, and then 3 minutes from now I can upload it, and then the station has it and they can have it on web within maybe 5 minutes. So it's a lot of different things, and that doesn't mean that, like, if you find, like Professor Steve just said, like, if you find a tool and it makes it look better, if it tells the story better, I don't think your news director is going to have a problem with it, because I've implemented so many different kinds of cameras, a GoPro, a drone camera, in stories, and my news director was like, "That looks good."
And that's really the bottom line. Does it tell the story? The story actually becomes more important than the pure quality of a particular source. It's like I got a new set of people here, so they're still switching out. So I guess questions will come back in just a second. But let me introduce Leanne Abu Tabush. Leanne, how are you?
Hello, I'm back here. It's so nice being here. I am in my first market in Tallahassee. I'm very excited for all the questions. Want to help out as many people as I can. And
well, we appreciate your being here. It's excellent. Samantha Gutierrez and Alexa Velez are both here on the panel now, and I'm going to get some. There we go. Questions are back, so we are going to dive into our next question immediately. Take it away.
Coming to us from Courtney Gooden in Hollywood, California. As an independent journalist who may not have an editor or fact checker to run things by, who bears the burden of liability if you get some facts wrong? Do you have to carry liability insurance?
Well, most of, I think, our multimedia journalists here work for relatively large organizations. So I'm going to let Samantha Gutierrez tackle this, and then Willard's going to weigh in. So, Samantha, what do you think?
Hi, so I'm at WPTV. It is in West Palm Beach. And the way we do our things is we get assigned a manager every single morning. And right before I track my package, my manager needs to approve, fact check, and make sure that my work is at the standard of my station. And if anything really goes wrong, I think my manager assumes the liability.
Yeah, I think in formal newsrooms, particularly for big stations, there is definitely a hierarchy, and there's lots of eyes on these things because accuracy is critically important. Willard, you've been in this business for a long time. Talk about the new landscape of vetting sources and the rest of this.
Okay, first of all, with my investigative reporter hat on that side of it, she just spoke about some of the vetting processes as we do investigations. Especially at our owned and operated stations and at the network. There's a lawyer that we work with. And then after that, there's what we call our standards division, located in New York for NBC and other operations similar. And it has to go through this whole process before it actually then, that type of story that they think can have any liability actually to it is actually put on television. And if from memory, if you remember over the last several weeks, there was a big brouhaha at 60 Minutes over a story that had been vetted, that had gone through the process that they have, which is very similar, and had been approved. And then the new person who's the head over at CBS, the news section of it, stopped the piece from airing, even though the promos had gone forward. That's just the procedural process. Still, the liability when it comes to insurance is for the company itself. With my lawyer's hat on for you, media lawyer's hat on for you, a person that's an independent journalist, they are responsible specifically for whatever they put their name on. I get people calling my law firm about they believe they've been defamed. Sometimes it's a news organization. Sometimes, many times, it's in a condominium association. And someone posting a article, a picture, anything like that. It can be online. It can be social media. And so if a person believes that something was posted about them that's untrue, if it was disseminated to an additional person or party, and if they feel that they've suffered damages that harm them in some way, whether their reputation or whether or not financially, whether or not you're associated with a news organization, an infrastructural news organization, you can be responsible. So as an independent journalist, if you're going to do that and do that type of reporting, it would be a good idea to have some small business insurance because you're liable for what you post about another individual.
Would that be standard errors and omissions, or is there something specific that people should look into if they're thinking about doing this?
No, it could be, a general liability insurance type policy. That insurance company, once you explain to them exactly what type of business that you're in, then it would be crafted for a journalism business or a news organization. It would just be the types of coverage that you have would really be the same as any of our legacy media. It would just be, obviously, the amounts would be different, but it would need to cover those types of insurances.
Outstanding. Let's go to our next question.
Here's one from Karen Parker in South Florida. How has the academic training you received while at university translated to what you're actually doing in the field? What was the most surprising aspect?
Alexa raised her hand for this. Alexa, dive in.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. I work at Gulf Coast News in Naples and Fort Myers. So I think that FIU, where I went at Florida International University, it did get me ready for the real newsroom experience because Professor Steve taught us how to structure a story correctly, how to track something properly, not to sound too performative, too loud. The ethics of journalism, if you have a source, how to keep a trusted source, make sure that you develop those relationships with people, interviewing as well. What kind of questions can you ask? How can you make people comfortable? Just little basic things like that, AP style. How to write an article properly, those types of things definitely prepared me for the actual job in a real newsroom. Not that school is not a real newsroom, but and something that surprised me, I think, is when we were still students, we didn't really push the social media aspect of things as much. We were very focused on the, I guess, old school journalism, how to write properly and how to make a package properly, how to edit it, put it together. But when I started working where I am now, we have to push a social video every day. So vertical video, 30 seconds.
Interesting. So
Mhm.
you have a standard to meet where you have to publish something in the vertical format every day. And is that basically for web content for the station?
So yeah, we have to make a video every day and it needs to be, they post it on all our social medias. So they'll post it on Facebook, Twitter, X, Instagram. We're pretty big on Instagram, and TikTok and YouTube. So yep, we got to make it every day.
Yeah, that's the different environment now. It used to be the broadcast stations, radio and television were pretty much the only media outlets. Now you've got so many
Yep. And
potential huge eyeballs. Go ahead, Alexa.
And you've got to cater everything to the social media format that you're posting on. For example, Facebook, it's more marketed towards an older crowd, and you would probably have more clicks and views on a standard article. But on Instagram, uh, everybody loves reels. So, vertical video, really quick, got to make it snappy, don't get too wordy. So it really depends on where you're posting, that you've got to cater your video to. So it's interesting. It was different, but I like it.
Leanne?
I wanted to expand on what Alexa was saying, that we are also really growing our digital presence at Scripps. So in my current station, ABC 27 in Tallahassee, they are now bringing YouTube style videos and stories. So they want you to shoot your stories like you're vlogging, like you're going and exploring something, or and just showing where you're going, who you're talking with, like you're shooting a YouTube video. So I feel like it's helpful because that's the kind of content that I've consumed. But at the same time, it's very different than the training that I've had. So that's one thing that I feel like I was surprised to know that, you're supposed to be more casual and conversational and informal in the type of reporting that you're doing, and focus more on the storytelling. But obviously, everything that I learned at FIU gave me like the strongest foundation to kind of jump on whatever Scripps wants me to do and what's the trend now in terms of how people consume their media. So yeah.
That's fascinating to me. So are you essentially doing selfie stand-ups that are designed to go on YouTube in those kind of formats?
Yeah, so we're gonna start doing those next week, and they're trying to invest in vlog cameras, and they want us to use our phones and to also use our normal cameras that we use, but not only selfie style, but also different shots. So like a close-up shot, also like a 0.5 shot of you being like showing all the background behind you. So different shots. The transitions are going to be just a cut transition, nothing crazy. So no smooth transition. So more, that's the difference between like YouTube and then the normal stories that we traditionally do.
Interesting. It sounds like they're looking for authenticity with the generation that has been used to seeing this kind of stuff constantly. Stephen?
We didn't bring this up earlier, but at Florida National University, we have a live daily student produced newscast. So when they talk about academic training, it's a combination of the theory they learn in the classroom and then the immediate application they can make when they are doing a newscast every day. And then on top of that, we invite in guests like some representatives from Scripps Television, who is the company that Samantha and Leanne works for, came by just last week and showed us some of the cutting edge stuff that they're doing so that we can incorporate that into, into the experience that we're creating for the students in this newscast. And next week, a representative from Gray TV, which is the company that Casey works for, is going to come to our school and do the same thing. So we're taking every opportunity to try and, as close as we can in the school environment, create this professional feeling for them so that they can get the chance to get the reps in, have that experience, and bring that with them to their new job.
One of the advantages of being on the web and not in broadcast is I don't have to worry about the top of the hour, so I'm going to audible here for the back end crew. We're going to keep going because it's such a fascinating topic, and we have such an excellent panel. So we'll see if we can go for another 10 or 15 minutes if everybody is good with that. And next question.
Here's a QR code question from Valentina Gaspari in Miami, Florida. Is there a specific multimedia journalism skill you wish you had practiced more as a student journalist that has proven important in your job?
And we're going to ask Leanne and Samantha. So Leanne, start us off.
Yes, so one of the skills is obviously going live. That's going to teach you to improve your public speaking skills and be ready to talk on the spot and know the main facts that you want to present. Another skill that I feel like is really helpful is pitching stories and finding stories. And at Kaplan News at FIU, we did that every week. And you start, knowing your neighborhood or knowing the community that you live in, and you're connecting with your sources and finding those stories. So I feel like that's one of the most important skills, because you're gonna walk into a newsroom and you're gonna be asked every day to pitch 2 or 3 stories. So that's something that when you're in college, you have to be very comfortable with and know have those connections and a strong network that, you can reach out to and ask them, hey, what's going on in my community? And so I feel like those are the 2 things, just pitching stories and going live and practicing your public speaking skills.
Samantha Gutierrez, your thoughts?
I really want to piggyback off of what Leanne said about pitching. I didn't realize pitching was so important until I got a job in news. I really enjoyed our Friday meetings at Florida International University. We would pitch our stories, but it was very light news. It wasn't, it was a lot of evergreen content. Now in the news world, I'm expected to do something that is a day turn, and I need to have my pitches attached with interviews that I can do. And it is definitely more daunting than our Friday meetings in university. So getting that experience has been interesting as an MMJ, but I think that also navigating sites like courts of clerks and sites like that, starting to call public information officers and getting familiar with how that works. I think that's experience that I would have liked to practice a little more in university.
You're reminding me when my wife was first on air in Phoenix at the ABC affiliate, and one of her first live spots, she made a mistake and she came back really worried about it. And she said, but the news director looked at me and said, we're going to do it again tomorrow. So she suddenly felt a lot more comfortable realizing that this is not for the vault for the end of time. Things come and go in this new environment. Let's go to our next question.
Mark Giuliani in Washington, D.C. asks, with first responders encrypting their communications that scanners could pick up, how do you know where breaking news is happening?
Oh, interesting. It used to be the wire machines. Those are probably long gone. So Alexa Vilas, what's your source? How do you find stories?
I love it. I used to be an assignment editor in Miami. That was my first job that Steve got me in college at Local 10. So I know all about the scanners. But so now where I am, we have a few stringers. So people that go out and, look for news and shoot the content and send it to us, and we pay them for it. So we get a lot of breaking news through our stringers. We also have, this is tried and true, viewer tips. We got so many viewer tips into our newsroom. Hey, I just saw a cop fly by here and a helicopter circling in my neighborhood. What's going on? And then as soon as you get those viewer tips, then you can start making phone calls to the PIOs in the area, the police officers, anybody contacts you may have. Hey, I know Johnny that lives in the corner of that street, whatever. So something that will always be reliable, viewer tips. And once you make your presence known in the community, people will start reaching out to you and say, hey, Alexa, something's going on in my neighborhood, or I just heard something at the mall. And yeah, so when the scanners fail, viewer tips always come in handy.
Relationships. Leanne.
I just want to say that the biggest thing for me when I'm trying to find stories, but also to find what's the breaking news today, is being extremely active on social media. Like the first thing I do in the morning is open Facebook and see what people are talking about, because that's how I found my biggest stories in Tallahassee. So just opening Facebook, seeing what people are arguing about in those like small Facebook groups, on Instagram as well. So that's been like the number one thing, that everyone is active on social media. That's where they're bringing all their problems. That's where they're discussing the meetings and the commissioner meetings. Anything that you're thinking about, it's probably on Facebook. So that's my point.
Let's get to our next question.
This one is from Fav in Toronto. What assistive tools are you using today, or what tools would you like to have to make your workflow more efficient so you can focus on telling the story?
Samantha Gutierrez.
So I actually use an Osmo camera. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It is super tiny. It tracks your face. Yes, they are awesome. It connects to my little shirt, and it's my photog. I can walk around, I can show things, it follows my face, and I can have an interactive MMJ shot, which is what they love back at the station. But something that I want to talk about is actually how Scripps is implementing AI into our workflow.
Oh, please do. Yeah.
So we have Aria, and basically Aria can help you from a pitch bot, that it'll help you make your pitches better and give you suggestions on who you can reach out to and who you can interview for your story, to then digital conversion, which can convert my TV script into a web article, AP style.
Interesting.
Yeah, it could also convert, like if I need to do a VO-SOT and I already have my package script, I can toss it into Aria and it'll come up with a VO-SOT. Now AI, it trips up with the SOTs, the sound bites might not be accurate. So you always have to check. But
a little hallucination in there is what you're telling me.
Exactly. But I mean, it really does cut down a bunch of time on my workflow. And as an MMJ, it's the best.
Well, time is probably your greatest enemy and asset. If you can find time, you can make things better, but sometimes time just goes away. It's fascinating, the changes that we're hearing about here. Let's go on to the next question.
Mark Giuliani is back with us in Washington, D.C. Could the panelists walk through their favorite audio and video chains to get their reporting back to a station or platform, such as cameras, mics, lights, and uplinks?
I don't want to spend too much time, because I would imagine that as what I'm hearing at home from what's happening at my wife's station, this is changing so fast. I remember they did a big order for the multimedia journalists at their station, and then a month and a half, 2 months later, they went to buy new stuff, and they were going, well, let's get rid of that thing we ordered first. I mean, everything is changing so fast that we heard earlier that there's not much in terms of a standard anymore. Stephen Carilla, what are you hearing in your students?
So prior to teaching, I worked for 16 years at WSVN, which is the Fox affiliate here in Miami. And what most stations do is they have a proprietary cloud service, like 7 News subscribe to the Sony cloud. But basically you can pass video out to reporters in the field, and they can send their packages back to the station that way. In a pinch, they can use their live signal to, either through a live view or through the microwave truck, and you can roll back at the station as they feed their package back if you have to have it quick. If you have to have it super quick, there's a process called hot rolling where you can actually, from the truck, roll your package and have it just go out on the air, straight from your live report, like where the microwave truck operator would punch you on camera, then punch your package, and then punch back to you. So the answer to the question is it depends on how much time you have. But for 95% of situations, it's going to be over whatever the cloud service that your station subscribes to. Back in the day, by the way, and Willard can attest to this, it was some other person from the station, driving you out videotapes as fast as they can, and and you hustling your tapes back.
Yeah. Interesting. Are there a lot of, I guess it wouldn't be technically a multimedia journalist if you've got somebody with a live view backpack on and you are working as a reporter tethered to that, or does that still qualify?
Most of the time, it's a matter of safety.
Okay, good. That makes sense.
Every reporter that you see here has capable of and has probably had to before run a live shot all by themselves. But the stations, they understand the how necessary this multimedia journalist workflow is. But at the end of the day, they all say the same thing. The safety of our employees is the most important thing. So if you're on the side of a highway, or you're at night, and you're not sure of the safety of a neighborhood, they will send a second employee. Send a second employee out there to be with you. This is the news is important, and winning is important, and it's important to beat your competition. But at the end of the day, it's the safety of your employees that is the most important thing. And if it's not, you're not likely to keep those employees very long.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to hear that my assignment is to go check out a bar fight that's underway somewhere. So thank you. No, thank you. Let's go on. And I think we can get one more question in. Next question.
This one's from the QR code. Aliana Rivero in Miami, Florida asks, how do you know what to post to grab people's attention and get them to actually watch what you post?
The old if it bleeds, it leads problem. Leanne, what do you think? Oh, and Christine has her hand up too. So Leanne, start. Well, I'll go to Christine after that.
So I found that it's very useful when you start by showing what's happening. So give your B-roll, or maybe have for vertical videos or for digital videos, I like to start by having either doing a green screen and showing what's going on while you're talking about it, or just showing what's going on and then you popping on camera. So people want to see what's going on. And we started incorporating the sound bites and putting them in our digital videos. Even when it's very short, we try to put those because they get the attention of the viewers for some reason. So I would say that always showing what's happening right now, giving viewers a look at what's going on, put your best B-roll, your best sound bites, and also incorporating some statistics and numbers that seems to get people interested and interactive with what you're posting.
Independent versus affiliated. How does the status influence the way a story is packaged? Does it affect when you know a story will be bought?
I wanted to answer the last question. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Dive back. Okay. People remember.
No problem. No, yeah, Leanne, she actually hit it, right at the target. You really want to make sure you're coming out with your most interesting, whatever that is. And so sometimes, it might not necessarily be video, but it might be information. And so, the digital world, social media is completely different, from your traditional, anchor your intro and then the start of your package. You kind of build up when you're writing your traditional TV package. But with digital social media, you've got 2 seconds to come out or the person is going to swipe. They don't care. You got 3 seconds to tell me what it's about. Why do I need to stay? And then build up from there, right? And so whatever that information is, whether it's a video, whether it's the craziest aspect of the story, this guy was shot dead here, whatever that is, you got to come out and hit it very strong. And then be visual. So just come out with your most powerful, whatever that is, whether it be video, whether it be a soundbite or quote, whatever that is, that's what you need to start with.
Yeah, it's a swipe away world. So if you don't catch them fast, you're not going to catch them at all. That's sadly the way we the way the world is right now. Let's go to one more story.
Nicolette Esper in Miami, Florida asks, as AI becomes more common in newsrooms, how can young journalists use it to work faster and smarter without sacrificing accuracy, credibility, and authentic storytelling?
And we got Samantha's raised her hand, so has Alexa. So Samantha, dive in.
I actually love this question. I think as young journalists, especially as young MMJs, I'm compared to reporters at my station that have a photographer. So being able to have AI as a helping hand throughout my journalism, it's awesome. I leverage ARIA, as I mentioned. It is specifically scripts, so we're not allowed to use any AI other than the one our company provides for us. That kind of helps our integrity, sort of, because it has some parameters set. But overall, I mean, as a journalist, I cannot just go with AI and that's okay. I always check everything a million times because I don't want to sacrifice my credibility or my accuracy when I'm using AI platforms. So yeah, if like an audio is messed up, there's usually AIs in the editing platforms, like I use Final Cut Pro, and that AI will help me clean my audio, or an AI will help me color match. So I don't have to spend time doing what I would, other reporters have photographers doing that for them. I just have AI helping me through that process.
It sounds like you're seeing AI as kind of a personal force multiplier, but realizing that you still have the final responsibility to make sure that what the AI is feeding you is accurate and airworthy.
Absolutely.
I got that kind of right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Alexa.
Yeah, so Samantha, you said it really well. We also have a Hearst GPT where I'm at. So it's like Chat GPT, but with parameters set for Hearst. And I kind of think of it as my little assistant. You know, if I need to, let's say I have a really lengthy police report and I'm like, oh God, I need to read this all in 5 minutes. Oh my gosh. I'll put it into the Hearst GPT and I'll say, hey, can you tell me the key things that this police report says? It'll say that this was the date that it happened. This is the time the call came in. This is the address. This is the name of the victim. So that's really helpful whenever you're in a pinch. Obviously, go back and verify it with the actual police report. We also have something else called Genera UI, which, like everyone else has been saying, you copy paste your package, your VOSOTs, and it will turn those things into a web article that's ready to publish. So you can just copy paste that, put it into whatever platform you use to push your web articles. I always like to go in and make sure that everything is accurate and correct. AI is not perfect. And something else that I am so thankful for, that I love, we use Premiere Pro to edit. And in the beginning, I used to have to listen to all of my interviews and write them down manually and have to put in the time codes and everything. So that was fun. Yeah. And now with the Premiere Pro, it will automatically log the interviews for you and it'll put in the time codes for you. So it's amazing. It's been a lifesaver and I can finish my packages way quicker with that.
Yeah. Auto transcription has changed a lot of the workflow for people. I'm going to go to Willard for this question, and then I think I'm going to dive to our professor to kind of wrap things up. We're getting close to the top here. So Willard, what say you?
Well, as we have heard, the AI is fantastic and can do a great job in expediting some of these functions. But it's just fantastic that I'm hearing from our young journalists that they understand and know that the duty ultimately is upon them because it's our name, your name that is going on the product, that's going on the air, and you are ultimately responsible. And there can be a great temptation to take as fact what the AI is telling you. And the ones that I use, I actually test it every now and then, giving it items and things to solve that I already know the answers to. And it does come back incorrectly at times. So that's very, very important. I think the biggest thing with it that you can use with confidence is calendaring things. items that I am always telling and touting for our journalists, no matter their experience level, to always separate yourself from the competition. Have exclusive stories that nobody else has. And the AI can help you do that by strictly putting a calendar, knowing there's a court date that's going to transpire, knowing that the discovery in a case is going to happen on this day. And while everybody else forgets, and you may forget, but that morning or the night before, you'll get an alert in your calendar. You'll know to follow up with the clerk of court. And therefore, that day, you have an exclusive story, and all of your competitors are saying, how are they able to do that? And I think that's one of the biggest benefits with confidence that you can put in the AI.
I'm going to toss it for our closing little discussion here to Professor Corella, because he's our closest expert about this whole subject. Anything you want to say to wrap up our discussion for today?
Really briefly on that last question, and this goes for the journalists as well as the audience: trust the source, right? In the beginning, you're going to find a news organization that you trust. And when when it comes to AI, you're the gatekeeper, right? Like a lot of them had said already, you have that information, no matter who generated it, has to pass through your eyes before it goes on the air or before it gets published to the website. And in the beginning, they're going to trust that, Channel 5 or Channel 2, right? But then they're going to go from that to trusting through that relationship with the organization, Samantha Gutierrez, Alexis Velez, Leanna Butarbush, Christina J. Harris. Like they'll find journalists that they trust, and and in addition to posting things to social media for each of the individual stations, they also keep up their own online presence, a professional online presence, and a one-on-one relationship through social media with the viewers. And I just wanted to wrap by saying how proud I am of all of you guys. For those of you who have been to the campus lately, that I have a map on my bulletin board in my office. And when you guys move from station to station, like your little pin moves and your little Polaroid, so I am definitely living vicariously through all of your successes. And, in this day and age when everything is available online, it doesn't matter if I don't live in Tallahassee or if I don't live in Naples or if I don't live in Mobile, Alabama, I can watch you guys and, enjoy every minute of it. I know that all of your successes are not because of where you went to school. I know they're because of your hard work, but just to know that my colleagues and I, just for us to know that we had a small piece of helping you get your start, brings us a tremendous amount of pride. We are very proud of you guys.
And that's going to wrap up the Tuesday Focus for today. Special thanks to a lot of people, to our incredible multimedia journalist panelists, to Willard and Stephen. And I have to do a special thanks to Stephen's brother, Jason Corella, the attorney who has been instrumental in helping us access the expertise for today's show. Thank you so much. Special thanks to the back office and the back end office hours crew, including Florence Dollar, Peter Belbin, Florence Donald, Peter Belbin, Alan Scott, Cindy Drozda, and particularly Tlaloc Lopez Waterman, our TD for today's efforts. It does take a village to put a program like this even on the web, and we are grateful for all your talents. Couple of very quick notes coming up tomorrow. It's Wednesday. It's our audio-focused morning show. So if you have questions about audio, we usually have an extraordinary panel of audio experts handling that most difficult of technologies. Thursday is the rundown in the evening with David Paskin, the deep dive into technology. That happens at 6 p.m. Pacific. And so that's all I've got to say other than thank you so very much for tuning in to our Tuesday Focus. We will be back next week with another panel doing the same exact things. See you all next time.